Swapnil, should we begin?
Hi, Arunima.
Hi, good morning.
What's up?
Excited for
Excited?
another Live Better series. Yes.
Yes. So am I. Can you just give me a minute? I'm just going to raise my curtain because I think the lighting is gone yellow. Although it is quite a dull day in the beautiful state of Goa, our hometown. Come on, let's get started. We have 12 people online for our Live Better series. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Selva. Good morning, Natrajan. We have our regular suspects, regular people, so we're always happy to cater to them. Let's shoot. What are we talking about, Arunima, today? I know you just told me that literally, like I think a minute back when I asked you, what are we talking about today? And you said, this is what we're talking about. But
Right. So 2 classes back, we talked about what the purpose of life is, which is to design a life of peace or to live a life of peace. So I thought today we should delve further into the how part of it. How do we actually design a happy and peaceful life? And just to give some sort of pointers for us to have discussions on, I want to know if there's some sort of formula or some sort of scientific or non-scientific way to go about this when it comes to your relationships. What kind of relationship do you need to maintain? How much time do you need to spend with others when it comes to your work, when it comes to your hobbies, when it comes to holidays? So basically, how do I live and how does everyone live a happy and peaceful life?
good. It's like you've asked such a big question so casually. Say, I have a bit of a small question. Can you just tell me about how to live life peacefully, right? Something which is kind of so difficult to. It's both very difficult to do it, and in a way, for some people, it's so simple, right? So it's one of those things.
Right.
But before we even get to the how part, I want to in a way reiterate
Mm-hmm.
the first part of what we discuss. I know we've said it in the first class, but I myself, it takes a lot of um, me hearing these thoughts again and again from different sources in different ways for them sometimes to click in my head,
Yeah.
right? So it's not something that just happens once. It's such an important issue that it requires revision, it requires reminders, it requires different ways in which people tell you that same information that makes it click, right? So we started the premise saying that what is the what should be um, a, every person's purpose in life, right?
Correct.
What should be every person's purpose in life, right? And to which the answer is that the purpose of every person's life of their life should be to live their life peacefully, right, in a state of peace. Now that may not be a constant stable state of peace that you're feeling exactly that much peace, because the thing is you can't put a number on to peace, right? You can't say I
Correct.
am you could say, oh, on a scale of 0 to 10, where are you on the peace parameter, and that may not even be constant on a day to day basis, right? But to overall in the 0 to kind of 70 years that you have to live, right? Or 70 to
Yeah.
75 years that you have to live, right? If you end up living a full life, to say that, and till the time you're probably 16 years, you're a kid, you don't really know what is happening to a great degree, right? So probably 16, 18 to 75, that is the time that you have where you've kind of turned into an sort of an adult, and then you spend this much time. So in this much time, which is close to probably 60 years of your life, how do you live these 60 lives largely peacefully? And when I talk about peacefully, the only way to describe peacefully is where on the inside you are feeling pleasant, you're feeling nice, you're feeling kind of good, right? There's no other way to describe a peaceful feeling, right? Now, um, when you talk about a peaceful feeling, I'm talking about some kind of a baseline kind of level of being peaceful, right? What do I mean by baseline level of being peaceful? That, say, if you meet a certain goal or you get a certain promotion that you have, you will feel, very happy, and you could feel very ecstatic in that moment, right? That moment that you say got a promotion, or say you got married and you're excited about getting married or whatever it is, right? So in that moment of achieving some goal that somebody had set for yourself, you could feel happy, ecstatic, and you could feel really good. But the baseline of how you're feeling, the baseline can't be that you're feeling miserable, right?
Yeah.
On the other side, on the negative side of this, that there could be a kind of death in somebody's in your family of a close one, or somebody could go through a kind of very bad disease and stuff like that, and you may during those periods feel low or sad, right? It could be anxious, so on and so forth. So you will have in your life times when you are going to feel all these things, and you're going to have times when you're going to you're going to have highs and you're going to feel these things. But more or less through your life, is there some kind of a base level kind of feeling that you have, which is peaceful, the other words which may not be perfect words, but where you have some kind of stability in the way you're feeling,
Right.
right? So some kind of, the other word that we gave it, if you remember, is emotional stability, right? That you're feeling, that you're not constantly, as soon as you're waking up, feeling anxious. You wake up, you feel panic, you wake up, you feel low, you wake up, you feel sad. Like, those kinds of things are not really happening to you, right? Where you feel pleasant, and on some days you are going to have your worries on stuff. But even when you're having those worries, it's really, you achieve this fundamental level of kind of stability, peace first, and then you're concerned about something, you're worried about something. That's very, very different than to be in a constant state of being
Correct.
worried, being sad, being low, being anxious, being panicked. And that is so miserable, right? So like we discussed, very often people think that money will solve all your problems. And we've discussed this in the past, saying somebody could have a lot of, think of two people, somebody that has let's just take money as a parameter, right? So money, and this is somebody that has a lot of it, this one that has got, say, average means, and this one has got no money, right?
Yeah.
Is totally broke. Now, the thing that we discussed is, you could have a person that has a lot of money, but is kind of feeling miserable from the inside, right? And you could have a situation where somebody has got absolutely no money. Again, when you have no money also, it's very difficult to feel good from the inside, right? Because it brings about a whole set of other problems that can make you feel miserable. If you have no money and absolutely no resources, if you're downright broke. But let's look at this average person with average means. This person with the right kind of mindset could be kind of very at peace, right? So just imagine, this person with a lot of money is feeling miserable from the inside, and this person with average means is feeling extremely kind of
Yeah.
extremely positive from the inside, living a better life, right? In my opinion, this person is living a better life, right? Because this person thought, right, probably when he was trying to achieve professionally, trying to make money, trying to do all these things, that money would sort his
Correct.
would make him feel good. And in spite of getting that money, if he doesn't feel good, then getting that money, getting that success, getting all those things seems like a real waste. And this is a quote that we discussed, right, where we said that Anthony Robbins says success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And that's
Failure.
exactly what it means. Just, we know so many people that went on to achieve so many things, and yet they feel miserable from the inside, right? So the story there is that, for anyone that just thinks money will sort all your problems, no, money will solve your money problems,
Yeah.
right? And solving those money problems are very important, and I'm a big believer of solving those problems. Because again, after giving I'll just go back to this thing, right? So after giving these kind of issues a lot of thought. What I've realized is that the first thing, Arunima, that all of us need to do, coming to your kind of question of how exactly do we do this, there's no easy answer, and we're just here to discuss kind of ideas that can help people. But the first thing that every person should do is kind of remove things in their life that are causing misery,
Yeah.
right? And remove things that are there in your life that cause misery. And the more you kind of work towards removing things in your life that are causing you sadness, misery, so on and so forth, the more closer you tend to get towards, having that baseline level of, of being emotionally stable and peaceful, right? In your way. And again, this is not that simple an issue, but I hope I'm making sense to you, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, when you can start removing all the things that are going to cause you pain, are going to cause you misery, the more you can kind of get them out and sort those things out, that puts you in a place where kind of, you'll start feeling better about it. And then, of course, at all points of time, like we've discussed, no amount of finding the right career, no amount of having money, no amount of looking good, no amount of any of these things can really help you out if you do not have the right kind of beliefs inside you, right? If your thought process is screwed, if you don't hold the right kind of beliefs about life generally, no amount of these external things that can really help you. And the minute you start kind of changing your thoughts, changing your beliefs, right? A lot of the things on the outside can be almost the same,
Yeah.
and still you will start feeling a lot better, right? I just want to give you one example, and then I want to kind of just to reiterate the point that I was trying to make, and then we'll kind of steer this discussion into what are some of the things that people can do to plan towards getting to living a peaceful existence, which is just basically a feeling from the inside where you're feeling pleasant, good, nice. There's no other way to describe it, right? So I'm a big sports fan, and in turn I am also a big kind of boxing and mixed martial arts, and I love watching these things. So the current heavyweight champion of the world is a person called Tyson Fury, right?
Hmm.
That's his name. As it happens, he's been named after Mike Tyson, because his entire family, he comes from a family of boxers and boxing enthusiasts,
Got it.
right? The current kind of world champion. And so ever since he was a kid, his only ambition was to become the heavyweight world champion of the world, right? That's the only ambition he's had. And as it turns out, kind of, I think 5 or 6 years back, he reached that milestone. He actually became the world heavy, and which is a big deal, right? That's like the ultimate thing in the sport of boxing, that you become the world heavyweight champion of the world. So Tyson Fury, and you guys can read up on him. So he became that ultimate thing, and so he had tons of money. He achieved his childhood goal.
Hmm.
He's got worldwide fame, and also it's an amazing feeling when people know you as one of the strongest, baddest men on the planet, right? That's an
Right.
amazing feeling, just like it's amazing feeling to be known as one of the smartest people on the planet. When you are known as the strongest man, right, the strongest fighter, right, that would be a great feeling in itself. So all these things, so he goes on to achieve this goal of his. And then after that, he breaks down, right, after kind of winning and whatever, and he goes into a state of what he calls the saddest time of his life, the deepest depression that he's ever had,
Hmm.
right? After achieving his goal, having a great career, having all the other factors that you would think like would make you ecstatic, he goes to that, and then he puts on weight, which is, you need to see his before after pictures,
Hmm.
right? He goes from being this super fit guy to this totally obese guy that
Hmm.
is doing nothing but drinking, eating rubbish, and doing drugs, right?
Hmm.
Right, he goes like mad. And he has a family, he has a beautiful wife, he has a family. So even on that kind of those parameters, right, it's not like he doesn't have companionship or doesn't have children that he really, even on that, to the extent where he gets into one of his Ferraris and he starts driving literally just around town, to the extent where he feels that he wants to commit suicide, right? He wants to drive off a cliff, literally drive. That's how bad he's feeling. He wants to drive off a cliff, the world heavyweight champion of the world, right? And he almost does it, and then he
Mm.
kind of, he's almost going off it, and then in a movie style, he, just averts it and kind of turns in the other direction, and doesn't do it, right? And then when he speaks about it, what he talks about is just very simply, what got me into a depression is the wrong mindset, and what got me out of depression also is the right mindset,
Correct.
right? So he's like, of course, I'm sure he went for therapy, all these things, but he's like, none of those things are really going to help you if you have beliefs in your head that are totally screwed,
Yeah.
right? If those are the cases, nothing can help you, and you're going to feel very, very low as a result of these wrong beliefs that you have in your head. And the minute, I averted that disaster of suicide, and I started changing my thoughts about it, that's it. The way I started feeling started changing, right? And again, one of the things that both you and me have discussed is, he talks about having a certain possibly predisposition, right,
Correct.
towards feeling low, feeling sad, feeling depressed, right? It's something that he says he's always had those areas where he felt he was going into the dark side, but somehow his ambition, his
Yeah.
focus on his work, all these things really kept him on track, right? So that's what he says. He says, even after I retire, I know I need to work out every day, I know I need to have a mission every day, I know I need to have all these things, I know I need to be grateful, I know all these things that I need to do that are going to keep me on the right track. So as it happens, this guy that almost commits suicide is totally out of shape, all those things. So you need to kind of give away your world title, right? If you're not going to be boxing for a while, you
Correct.
can't just have it. And he was in no state to box or do anything, so he gave away his title, and then he started his entire journey exactly like a movie, right, of coming back to the sport that he had just kind of, in a way, semi retired from, right? He came back and he kind of worked, and then he won the championship again, right? And now he's again like the champion of the world. And again, my whole point is, he had everything,
Yeah.
yet what led him to depression are the wrong beliefs about life. What got him out of it, again, were the right beliefs about what needs to be done, and that right mindset was there that got him out of that. Nothing else got him out of that, right? And then staying focused on it and doing, and then having those things. So therefore, coming back to, if any one of you all think that like success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure, right? And no amount of that is going to buy you. When people say that peace and happiness and all these things is an internal job, right? You'll have so many people saying that it's not. That does not mean that the world outside
Yeah.
or what happens on the outside doesn't happen to the world inside. Of course it matters, because we are living in the world, we are social animals, right? But what it means is, you can have all the things on the outside that you may think are required to feel good on the inside, and yet if you don't have the right beliefs, if you don't design your life properly, if you don't do a lot of those things properly, you're still going to end up feeling kind of miserable on the inside. And like we said, that's a terrible way of living your, you know actually 60 years, so to speak, is a terrible way to live it, right? So that's just kind of thoughts that we in a way have discussed earlier, but it's just very important. Like, if you remember, we promised each other that every session that we do in a live better, through our life, first we'll state this, right?
Yeah.
Because until you really understand what are we trying to get, right? And then we're so busy doing so many things. And for me, just about every decision that you take in your life, right? Just about every decision that you take in your life needs to move you in an area of feeling good, peaceful, right now, in the medium term, and in the long run, right? So that those are the things that you need to constantly think about before taking every decision that you would take, right? Of saying
Correct.
that, okay, does this decision contribute to me feeling good in the present over a medium and over a long term, right? Let's forget
Right.
medium, that could confuse people, just in the present and in the long run, right? So what that means is, kind of for a lot of people, working out may not be a pleasant feeling, right? It may not be something that you inherently enjoy, like a few people could inherently enjoy, right? Another person may not inherently enjoy working out. um, but if they don't work out in the present, that makes them feel miserable, they are setting themselves up for bad health, right? And the minute you have bad health, that will start pushing you in a direction of not feeling pleasant, right?
Yeah.
And why will that push you in a direction of not feeling pleasant? Because if you have bad health, what tends to happen with bad health is, say, you could put on weight, right? That could be one of the reasons. So when you put on weight, you will not feel good about yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror. That's one way in which you won't feel good about yourself. um, the second one is, you will not be attractive to other people, right? And again, that those other people could be a date that you could go for, or it could be your current spouse, right? We take our spouses and our partners for granted, that we never think that we need to remain and be attractive for our spouses, and then we wonder why there is no interest, there's no chemistry between you and your spouse, because you've not taken kind of any interest to, for a want of a better word, upkeep yourself, right? You've not taken any effort towards that. So how is it, your spouse going to be attracted to you when you are not taking any effort to upkeep yourself, right? So again, why do you need to be healthy, and how does that kind of impact your kind of mental state? Number one, you look at yourself, you don't feel good about yourself. Number two, other people look at you and they don't feel good about you, which leads to, if you're going to go for a date, the chances of you finding an attractive spouse, I keep making the joke of you being able to retain your existing spouse, or at least retain the chemistry with your existing spouse, that becomes a problem. And then you have other health problems, which are, you're tending yourself to a heart attack, right? You're going in the direction of having other ailments, right? Which is going to lead to a problem in your life, right? It's very difficult to be feeling good about yourself when you're hurt or when you're in pain, right? It's very difficult for you to feel at peace with yourself when you're not sure whether you're going to die or not, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the ultimate thing. If anybody says, right, oh, I may die, I may get a heart attack in 15 minutes, but I'm very peaceful right now. You get my point. I'm saying this in
Yeah.
jest, but you get my point, right? So if your health is not good, you are not just going to disrupt your own peace, but you're going to disrupt the peace of the other people around you, right? So Arunima, if your health is not good, you're going to disrupt the peace of yourself, but you'll also disrupt the peace of your parents, of your sister, of your cousins, of your family at large. So everybody is going to be concerned, and not be. So it's such a responsibility to do that,
Yeah.
right? Now, that may not feel good for you in the moment, eating healthy and doing that, but it definitely helps for your peace and the peace of everybody else around you over a long period of time, right? And that is the kind of hard work and hard lifting that so many of us need to do
Mhm.
if we want to live a life which is of kind of overall, for our overall well-being, for our overall peace. If we don't do the hard lifting, if we don't do the hard work that is required, you are not going to have that kind of peace through your life. You are going to be unsettled kind of through your life, right? If that is not the case. And I'll just share one more thing with you. The same thing about a workout applies to many different areas of your life, right? And what I mean by that is that, a person, and you can take this example from school, college, to a person's professional life, right? A person may not, you know it's important for you or anybody else and any one of us to get a good education, right? Because getting a good education in, at least in the world that we are today, is your best bet towards
Yes.
finding intern a reasonable job, and then getting reasonable amount of money for that, where you're not in poverty, and when you have a life now, a good life. Now if you have to um, uh, the better college that you go to, or the the better marks, is going to be more beneficial for you, right?
Yeah.
But which requires the hard work of studying,
Yeah.
right? As you get into the corporate life, it's the same thing, right? You need to keep taking the effort to keep upskilling yourself, because the hard work that you take in terms of upskilling yourself on just about every issue will help you make more progress in your career. And when you make more progress in your career, number one, you will feel good about yourself, because as human beings, when you make progress, when you take on tough challenges and you succeed at them, the kind of feeling and confidence that gives you is unparalleled, right? So you must kind of succeed and do well and take on challenges and get past them, again, not for anything else, but for that sense of satisfaction, and in turn that good feeling that it gives you, right? You need to do it for that good feeling that it gives you. And for that, you need to take some effort, right? And that effort may
Yeah.
not be that pleasant always, but in the end you'll get that reward, which is deeply satisfying. And it's not just the reward. What happens when you take that hard work that is required at the workplace, you get that kind of deep satisfaction of that. And it also leads to you having better money. It also have leads to you putting yourself in a good place in your career. It leads to so many of these things, which again contribute to your overall well-being, peace, satisfaction, and stuff like that,
Correct.
right? So a lot of people will a lot of people have forgotten these things, right?
Hmm.
And I hate saying young generation, but a lot of people under the guise of YOLO, which is you live only once, right? Correct, am I right?
Yeah.
You live only once, right? So under this guise of saying, oh, I need to do what feels good in the moment, no, 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 no. When we're talking about peace, when we're talking about feeling good, when we're talking about all these things, this doesn't mean that on a minute to minute basis
Hmm.
you only do things that are going to make you feel good in the moment, right? That's how kids behave, right? No, that's not what it means. To have an overall life, like I said, I pointed out towards the
Yeah.
60 years, right? To overall be in a state where you're feeling emotionally stable, emotionally good, emotionally pleasant through most of your life, right? You need to do a lot of like I said, you need to understand the purpose of life is to be peaceful. You need to understand that to start with, and every decision that you take needs to contribute towards that peace of yours over in the immediate and over a long period of time, right? You need to really understand that's because if you live a life, however successful you are, and feeling miserable inside, that's a terrible way of living. So take every decision from that point of view, right? Whether it's in the contributing to your short term and long run. And the next point that we discussed, for you to have that baseline feeling of peace, emotional stability. At a lot of places currently you may not feel good about it, but it leads to the future being better.
Yeah.
And therefore it's very important to take that hard work in the present for a better future.
Future.
And just by the way, people that are slightly smarter, what they end up doing is all the things that kind of they don't possibly enjoy that much right now, they train their mind in a way where they also start enjoying that thing that they're doing, that
Correct.
leads to the long term success, right? So just to give you an example, my like I keep mentioning, my biggest struggle has always been my in a way by my weight, my fitness, right? That's been my kind of biggest struggle, because I have two parents that were really obese, right? They had a tendency of putting on weight, and so I'm sure I have that as well. And however hard I work, right? I keep telling you, my all the hard work that I do on my fitness means that I don't lose weight, but I just about am at the same weight, and I need to do a lot of hard work just to remain at that same weight, right? And eat healthy and do all those things. But now in the activities that I do to remain healthy, I have
Yeah.
figured out the stuff of how I can make that activity very, very pleasurable, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't become a pain anymore for me. It becomes that activity itself that I wouldn't like at some point of time itself becomes enjoyable,
Yeah.
right? So for example, I've discovered that I like going for walks. If I'm in Goa right now, I try to go for a walk at the beach, right? And that has become my most enjoyable activity of all the activities I do through the day,
Yeah.
right? So something that wasn't a good activity has become a good activity. So, and before that, I discovered that when I am in Bombay, I discovered that running and listening to music, right? I wouldn't do that much, but listening to my favorite music when I'm running, so I get to listen to a music for an hour, or a nice lecture or a podcast, or something that I really enjoy doing with that working out is a great combination, kind of for me. Or I like playing squash, so I do that. So even that, in the end, you can, that activity that is not so pleasant in the
Correct.
present,
You can
you
make
can,
it so that you're getting gratification out of that also
you're getting
in the
gratification.
immediate.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
I
So yeah,
have.
I've gone all over the place, but yeah,
Yeah,
bring
it's
bring me
okay.
back, and
That's
ask
what
me
I'm
some
here
questions.
for.
Yes, yes, yes.
So you, in a way, have already answered this, but I just want to bring it up once again.
Yeah,
Right at the beginning, you mentioned that a good way, or one of the ways that you can achieve peace is by removing things in your life that make you
yeah,
miserable, right?
yeah,
Now, let's say I am someone who finds working out just an absolute chore, right?
yeah,
I hate it. It makes
yeah,
me truly miserable.
yeah,
Now, how do I, like, now you've obviously explained the long term benefits or something like that.
yeah.
So how do I, as a person, measure where I need to give my future or long term sort of rewards more priority versus my current my current happiness?
Correct. So I'll. It's a very difficult thing to answer, but I want to kind of step back and answer this thing. I want to bring everybody the attention to what are the areas of life. The way I want to do that, Arunima, I want to bring everybody the attention to what are the areas of life that are really important,
Sure.
right? And that you really need to focus on, right?
Hmm.
And until you kind of understand those areas, saying, oh, this is the thing that is important that I really need to focus on, right? So I think from there is one area that is become very I think which is very, very important for people is relationships, right? I think that is a very, very, very important area of people's life, right? And okay, let me put this section in this manner, right? What I'm talking about, right? That what are the areas of life that people need to get a good understanding of
Hmm.
and get better at? In another way, what are the areas of life where people need to develop their knowledge, skills, and attitudes and behaviors, right?
Correct.
So coming with a construct that we use for the work life, so what are those areas where people really need to develop their knowledge, their skills, their attitudes, so that they can live a peaceful life, right? What are those areas? So the number one area, because we're social animals, is your relationships. So okay, let's start with this, right? What are the things that you need to get better at? You need to get better at, how do I become a good spouse or partner, right? Media, before replying to stupid WhatsApp groups, before doing all the rubbish corona research that you do, which where you have absolutely no idea about what you're reading, before doing all these things, have you given this topic attention? Have you tried to become a master? Have you tried to become the best spouse or partner that you can possibly be to your partner, right? And don't tell me that, oh, but that the other person should also become a great partner. Sure, but you're attending this class, you're listening to this, right? So let it start with you. But how do I become an amazing spouse? How do I become an amazing partner, to my partner, right? In the same thing, right? If you don't have a partner, how do I find a great spouse or partner, right? To this question, you need to be like, okay, how do I get good at dating, right? How do I get good at meeting people, right? And to this question, to both these questions, right? Both these questions, one of the big answers is be attractive, right? And I don't mean just attractive physically. Have an attractive personality, which is your physical, your outside and your inside, right? Be attractive from the outside and the inside, right? On both these aspects, be attractive. A good person, a nice person is attractive, right? People like being with people who are pleasant, who are positive, who are nice, who are helpful. You like
Yeah.
being with such people, right? And the more you are that person, the more people are attracted to you. The best way to attract a good spouse is to be attractive yourself, right? That's the best way to attract a good person, is to be attractive yourself, right? So understand how do I become a good, understand, study, upskill yourself on the subject of how do I become a great spouse or partner to my kind of wife, right? Now again, while I'm giving you this gyan, right? I'm not saying I am the best spouse to my partner, but just trust me when I say that I'm always thinking about it. I'm always taking the effort to it. And I know areas where sometimes there are areas with your spouse where there are issues which you all are totally kind of at loggerheads at, right? You all are looking at it totally differently, which means, there is this one issue that if I don't do, I will be miserable about it. Right. And if I do it, my wife will be miserable about it, right? Are you getting it? If I do something, if I don't do that, I will be
Yeah.
miserable. And if I do that, my wife will be miserable, right? And there's somewhere you need to kind of find some kind of a middle ground in those areas. But just trust me when I say that those areas are very, very few areas, right? Where you'd have that conflict, where even if you want to be a good spouse, there are those areas which are there. But how do I be a good spouse, good partner? Do you know a big kind of answer to this is just to be kind of, if positive, if you're in a great state of mind, if you are a positive person, if you're in a great state of mind, you tend to be a good partner. That's one of the big things. And if you're in a kind of negative state of mind, if you're constantly irritated, annoyed, right, not at peace, not in
Yeah.
a good space, you will be a terrible partner as well, right? So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation as well,
Correct.
happening there, right? But if you don't have this part of your life sorted, you're going to kind of be in trouble. And the same thing with finding a good spouse and partnership, right? Because as human beings, companionship is very important to us, right? So whether that companionship takes the form of marriage, it takes the form of just living in with each other, it takes whatever form, that's okay. But that companionship is so important for human beings that you'd really have to have a good reason, right, not to go in that direction, right? Now, what are the other relationships that are there, right? If you're a parent, how do I become a great parent? How do I
And then
become a great parent, right? Okay, on the other side, how do I become,
good child.
yes, how do I become a good child? If you're lucky to have your parents, right? How do I become a good child? Especially an adult child, like I say, right? So when you're an adult and yet you're somebody's child, it's a very different dynamic, right? So how do I become a good child, right? Now, how do I become a great family member, right? Okay. And the last one, I'm just going to write it here. How do I become a good friend, right? I think this more or less covers all the relationships that you're likely to have, right? in
Yeah.
in the personal side of your life, this is likely to go. Now, me and you, Arunima, can spend a whole lifetime here
Yeah.
working on ourselves, right? Without focusing on what the chief minister, prime ministers, and everybody is doing wrong, or what Virat Kohli is. You get my point of what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say, right? This is knowledge that is really helpful. If you study
Correct.
this is really helpful. Why is it really helpful? Because it genuinely contributes to your peace, to your happiness. It genuinely contributes to the peace and happiness. If you learn these things, it will genuinely contribute to the peace and happiness of the people immediately around you, right? If I learn how to become a better spouse, it is going to make my spouse happy. In turn, it's like that, it's
Yeah.
like a win-win. It's a chicken and egg and a win-win situation, right? That happens, right? So if I make my spouse happy, I'm likely that she is going to behave better with me as well, right? If I do that, right? If I the other part, if I learn how to find a companion, that's genuinely going to help me, right? It's going to make me feel better. If I learn how to become a good parent, that is genuinely going to give me more
Correct.
satisfaction. And a lot of times it is the topic of how do I become a better parent, right? Of course there is a way to be a better parent, right? Of course there is. If anybody is telling you that there isn't a better way of being a parent, they're kidding you, right? I think my wife is an outstanding parent to my child, right? Where does it come from? It doesn't come from just intuition. It comes from her constantly kind of reading, exposing herself to saying, okay, he's 3 years old, what should I do? And not just taking every advice that comes her way on YouTube or whatever she reads, really processing it herself, thinking about it herself, observing her child, doing all those things. I'm not saying none of us can be perfect at any of these things that I've listed out, right? So don't try to be perfect at any of these things, right? Know that all of us are in a work in progress in a way, and we need to keep getting better than we are on each one of these topics than we were yesterday. That's all
Yeah.
that I'm asking of you, right? I'm saying, be better at all each one of these topics than you were yesterday. And if you just constantly do that, you'll become such a good version of yourself that it'll even shock you. But if you're not going to take the effort to do it, right? And just by the way, again, in each one of these aspects, what people typically tend to do, if you think of it, you look at every aspect of this thing, they tend to blame someone else,
Yep.
right? They blame someone else. They don't think, how should I? So the blame that we put on the government, on God, it's we don't just, our blame game is not just limited to the government and God and all these other factors. Our blame, and our local corporator, our blame game starts from anybody but us is responsible for our plight.
Yeah.
Anybody but me is responsible for my sadness. This is your fundamental logic. Like I said, some of the beliefs that you need to fix in your head if you need to be happy. If your fundamental logic is not to look inwards and not to ask the question, what do I need to do better, right? If that's not your fundamental logic of operating, right, then you're always going to be in a state of unhappiness, right? If you're not going to think. And on the other side, like I've discussed this quote with you, right? um, Not everything is your fault and not everything is the world's fault. It's often
Correct.
50-50 in between, right? Not everything is your fault and not everything is the world's fault, right? It's somewhere in between that there is. But the only way to deal with this is, what do I need to do differently, right?
Yep.
So now let's look at the topic of saying, oh, what does my spouse need to change? No, 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 no. What do I need to change, right? You're not finding the right companion. Oh, there are no good men or women out there. No, 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 no. You don't know how to look for them. You don't
Yeah.
know how to be attractive to them, right? So don't tell me that in a population of 7 billion people that there is no one, right? You need to look harder, right? Because there's a reason why we've discussed this. Why do you need to look harder? Because people say, oh, in the olden days, like my parents generation, your parents generation, my parents slightly older than yours, but most two people were just put together and they would meet and say, get these guys married, right? So getting people married was very simple. You just got two people together, get married, right? If you follow that kind of a system today, everybody will get married even today, right? But that clearly was not the right way, because even though possibly in that generation the divorce rates were probably a lot lower, we know for sure, and if you observe, so many of them were so miserable in those relationships, but they probably didn't even know that they were miserable, because they probably didn't know there was a choice, right? And the
Correct.
minute you don't know that there is a choice, you kind of don't know that you're miserable in some kind of a way, right? But there've been so many of those relationships as well, where people, so today it's become that much more difficult for people to find partners, because they have a sense of self
Yeah.
awareness, which is very, very important. But that only means that you need to kind of look harder, and if you see somebody cute at a coffee shop, you go give them your number, right? So you need to do stuff like that, which puts you out there, and that itself requires some courage, right? If you don't
Yeah.
have the courage to face the rejection, if you don't have the courage to do all those things, the likeliness of you finding a good spouse it goes down, right? And if you want a good spouse, you need to be attractive, you need to be interesting. So again, work needs to be done on yourself and your approach, right?
I
If you
think,
want, let me just
yeah,
finish this thought and don't forget what you're trying to say, right? The same thing happens when it comes to the parenting, right? We are so busy blaming our children for generation gap, for this, for that, and we're never busy looking at ourselves and thinking, what do I need to do
yeah.
differently to bridge this gap? What do I need to do differently to kind of connect with my child? What do I need to do differently? What should I have done differently all his life? Now, again, to all the parents here, I'm not saying that this is entirely your fault, right? I'm not saying that how your child is turned out is entirely your fault, but it's very important to kind of introspect on these issues and see, what do I need to do to be better? If your folks are irritated, folks are irritated, you need to change for whatever. No, think of how you need to deal with them better. What can I do to interact, deal with them better? And sometimes dealing with them better is not living with them, right? Right, that could be an answer. But how do I make my relationship with my folks better, more cordial, more positive, where both of us draw positivity from that? And let me restate, like I have towards the start, none of these things work in perfection, right? None of these things are kind of stable or work in perfection. You need to constantly kind of get good at it, correct? And the same thing, right? How do I have good relationships? How do how do I get better as a family member? How do I have good relationships with them? How do I cultivate good friendships, right? And we need to kind of get into developing and improving ourselves in kind of each one of these areas, right? And 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 because every study on this planet, like we've discussed in the past, right, the golden kind of rule of what makes a person happy, the golden rule of what makes a person peaceful, like we've said, boils down to two aspects which are super critical, right? And kind of two or three aspects that we're going to list down here, but one of the key aspects is the quality of relationships that you have.
Correct.
The other aspect is your ability to constantly be grateful, right?
Correct.
And of course, the third one is kind of financial security, right? Because again, if you don't have financial security, we're not even talking rich, we're just talking if you need to be financially secure. Now, that financial security could come from your own money, your ancestral money, or whatever, right? If you're financially secure, that leads to you feeling kind of a lot more kind of peaceful and okay, as against somebody that doesn't have that kind of financial security, right, in some way. So yeah, so these are some of the elements. So get better at being in relationships, right? Get better at being in relationships, right? And if I were you, right, today we have a slightly a larger audience, we have 20 odd people, right, Arunima? Before you ask me a question, I just want to literally for people to kind of probably take 2 minutes and think about this, saying, hey, what is it that I'm going to do today, starting today or today, that is going to make me a better spouse?
Yeah.
Come on, tell me, what is the one thing? And there are simple things that you can do, right? Right. If you could do the simplest thing of going and appreciating your spouse for something, right? That'll be a great start. You don't need money, you don't need anything. You just finish this session, you walk to your spouse, and you see how difficult that one area is for you to self develop yourself on, is just to be appreciative of something that your spouse did or is doing, or is, you get what I'm trying to say, right? So something that they did in the past, if can you go and appreciate and say a kind word to your spouse, right? Can you say something positive to them? And you've seen couples, Arunima, you know that if a couple that you have observed closely probably all your life, right, if one of the spouse members just came out today and said something really and appreciated the other person, right, the rest of the people in the house would probably be in a shock, saying, what the hell happened here, right?
Correct.
So something as simple as that, which is a sign of being a good spouse, is what people don't do. So each one of y'all can think, what am I going to do today, right? Because there's no point listening to all this philosophy and all this living better crap if you're not going to be doing something if you're not going to act upon something, right? Because if you think that just listening to this is going to help you, no, it's a combination of listening to what we're discussing and you taking that into a world where you actually do something about it, right? So are you going to take this simple thought of saying, okay, for me to be a good spouse, I need to really kind of start thinking of what are all the things that I can do. And literally, things have become so easy in the modern world. If you're really interested in the subject, all that you need to do is type on the internet. You
Yeah.
just need to type, how do I become a better spouse or partner? And you will get so much of information on this that you'd probably spend your lifetime just specializing in that subject, and probably coming to a live better session and giving us a lecture on it after that, right? Of saying that, oh, these are all the things that you could do that would make you a better spouse, irrespective of what a witch, vamp, or villain your spouse is, right? uh, right. So irrespective of that, um uh, so what's the one big positive change that you're going to make right today? What are you going to do, right? And I'd ask you the same question, Arunima, right? So by the end of it, you can probably tell me that, hey, on the relationship front, on each one of these parameters, today this is the one thing that I did that is got me into action of being a better, you're not a parent yet, but become a better adult child, right? Or becoming a better
Correct.
friend, or becoming a better family member, or going in the direction of finding a partner or a spouse, right?
Correct.
By the way, finding the spouse is also the topic of really knowing who to choose and who not to choose, right? And you know that you tend to make bad choices when you're more desperate. So even that topic is, don't get to a state where you're too desperate, where
Yeah.
you feel that you have to choose. You're likely to make the bad a terrible choice, right? When it comes to that. So yeah, again, I would really recommend for everybody to think about the simple issue, of what do you need to do to become a better spouse today. If you don't know anything, maybe it's appreciation, right? That you can lead the way with, of appreciating something good, right? The same thing, if you're a parent, you can lead with appreciation to your child of something that they do really well, right? If it's again your parents, right, lead with appreciation. Appreciation is Mother Teresa had this beautiful quote, and I talk about appreciation so extensively when it comes to leadership, right? Mother Teresa has this quote where she says, there is more hunger for love and appreciation than there is for bread, right?
Correct.
There is more hunger for love and appreciation than there is for bread. And this came from a woman that saw, like, the poorest of poor, right? She saw poverty as closely as anyone else, right? There's another quote that says appreciation is the deepest human need, right? So both you receiving it, so if you know how good it feels when you receive it, and maybe one of the classes that we can have later on and live better is around
Yeah.
appreciation, right? And how to do it, because the rules of how to appreciate people are same whether it comes to leadership or your personal life, right? And in my experience in life, appreciation is nothing but you saying in a word a positive word, and you saying positive words when you genuinely mean them, um, creates positivity both for you and for the other person, right? Appreciating somebody is like giving somebody a gift. When you give somebody a gift, they feel good and you feel good about it, right? Both parties feel good when you present somebody with a gift. Appreciation is the same thing. They will feel good, you will feel good, and the more things you can do like that in your life, through your life, the better you're going to feel, the more positive you're going to feel, the more peaceful in turn you're going to feel, and you're going to be in those states of of positivity, right? So again, we're just on one subject here. I don't know, we're just
Yeah.
literally on one subject of which is important to us as human beings, that we need to get really good at. And yeah, so you can throw a few questions here. By the way, we didn't mention this at the start, but that during these live better sessions, if you have any questions, because we don't have sections earmarked, right? These are just as you see, these are broad conversations that Arunima and myself have on subjects of living your life better. So if you have any questions, keep posting those questions in the Q&A box. If you have any comments, like, somebody has a really nice comment where they said, you die only once, you live every day. That's a beautiful quote, Shivalika, right? I'm going to remember that for a long time in my life. I've never come across this quote. You only die once, but you live every moment, and therefore you need to know how to live every moment well, right? And you need to be a student of how to do that very well, right? Yes, Arunima, I'm sorry, I barged in. I didn't let you talk because I didn't want
That's okay.
to. You're
I
used to it.
yeah. I think we'll definitely, and I think this is something we've discussed, because we'll
Yeah,
need a class just on relationship, because there's so much to
yeah,
explore there, right?
yeah,
We've highlighted the different types of relationships here, and then how do you get better at each one of them. So
yeah,
either we can decide to continue the discussion today, or we can approach it another time. We'll come to that.
yeah,
Just a few points that I want to sort of
yeah,
talk about.
yeah,
One is, we talked about this when we did our session on managing your boss, and most participants here would have been part of that as well, where we say that before you think about, what kind of boss you have or why your boss is, how do you make your boss be a better boss, you need to ask yourself, are you a good subordinate, right?
exactly. Yeah,
And I feel like there are so many of these learnings and lessons that we talk about in our professional life, which can be so easily applied even in our personal life. So at every moment when you say that, how can I, why are my parents not better, or why is my child not behaving better, or why are my
yeah,
friends not good friends to me, I
yeah,
think at every moment you need to ask, but wait a minute, are you a good child to your
yeah,
parents?
yeah,
Right? Because if you are not doing that, then how are you expecting them to do the same?
yeah,
Are you being a good parent, or are you being a good friend?
yeah,
So at every moment when you ask yourself, when you complain or ask yourself about a relationship in your life or anything in your life, you
yeah,
need to reflect and think that, but wait a minute, am I being the perfect friend, am I being
yeah,
the good friend?
yeah,
So it's, I think, a constant state of self development and self introspection
yeah,
that you are sort of going through. Another sort of point that we talk about often when it comes to conflict management, is this whole idea of I messages, right?
yeah.
That instead of putting the blame on the other person, saying you don't do this, frame it in like the I form. And I think you can apply that here also.
Yeah.
At every moment, just reframe that same statement into an I form, that what are you doing about it, or if you are, at your
Ca-
best.
Can you just explain that? I know where you're going, but you're not explaining that well enough. The I thing.
Yeah.
So can you just give it another
um
jab?
okay. All right, so often, how we do this in,
If even if you want to come back to it later, you can come back
yeah,
to
I
it
think
later,
I'll do
right?
that.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
do
Because
that.
I put you on the spot by asking you that, but yeah, but I think that I think is a very important thing. So I want you to
Yeah,
think up of a good example that
I'll do that.
will help, and then you can come back, right? I
Correct.
just want to kind of make a comment on a couple of things that you kind of
Yeah.
spoke about, right? So since I've spent the bulk of my life, adult life, helping people work better, right? That's what I've done, and I've literally, like, I keep saying that I've dealt with thousands of people on this issue. When they would complain about their boss, I would say, but are you a good subordinate to your boss? They say,
Correct.
of course, yes, I am. Then I
Hmm.
realized that I had to reframe it. I say, yeah, maybe you are you the world's best subordinate to your
Hmm.
boss, right? Because we'd always think, oh, but I'm doing my stuff well.
Yeah.
And to that question, are you the world's best subordinate to your boss? Right? They'll be like, yeah, no, I'm not that.
Hmm.
I'm good, but I'm not great. I'm like, hey, if you have a difficult boss, the first thing that you need to do is, you can't be good, you need to be great.
Correct.
Right? Because if you had an easy to deal with boss, you wouldn't have to be great. Right? Even if you were good, that was enough. Right? It's like, if you are playing as an Indian team, if you're playing against Zimbabwe, if you play good, it's great. But if you're playing against kind of England, New Zealand, one of the good teams right now, you need to be great to beat them. Right? So if you want to deal with a difficult boss, just being good is not enough. You need to try to
Correct.
be the world's best subordinate. And again, that means looking inside, looking inwards, looking at where you need to improve your knowledge about the
Correct.
subject of dealing with your boss, knowing how to develop the skills, the attitudes towards, that topic, right? And what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
right? And the minute that focus is towards what do I need to do better, what am I doing wrong, right, that is when you become a walking talking university, right? That's where
Yeah.
you're improving yourself all the time. And again, I keep coming back, most people do not want to take this effort because improving yourself all the time takes effort, right? Therefore the lazy thing to do is to do
Blame.
WhatsApp discussions. Are you getting it?
Yeah.
WhatsApp discussions, blaming people, having opinions on stuff you know nothing about,
Correct.
right? भाई, तू अपनी बीवी को नहीं संभाल सकता और तुम बता रहे हो मोदी को अपना कैबिनेट कैसे संभालना है? भाई क्या बात कर रहे हो? तुम्हारे बच्चे तेरी तुम्हारे बात नहीं सुनते और तुम बोल रहे हो कोरोना का हल कैसे निकालना है? क्या बात कर रहे हो यार? पहले ये तो करो ठीक से। अपनी छोटी सी तो दुनिया है, वो तो फिक्स करो जहां कर सकते हो। You are feeling miserable from the inside and yet you want to give the solution of global problems,
Yeah.
right? खुद का problem पहले solve करके दिखाओ ना मेरे भाई। You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
खुद का ही problem तुम्हारे साथ solve नहीं होता और तुम people with the houses of glass shouldn't be throwing stones on other
Don't that.
people's
Yeah.
houses, right? In a way, right? So I'm constantly, I come back to this point, and maybe I'll do that in every kind of session, because if anybody asks me if they just give me like literally say, Swapnil, tell me the one thing, like literally the one thing that each and every person needs to do to improve their life, right? Work, personal, whatever. My answer to that would be constantly ask yourself the question, what do I need to do
Correct.
better? Right? Just constantly, what do I need to do better in this area? Right? Because the minute you kind of think about things from that point of view, it becomes very, very, the conversations, your thought process becomes very, very different, right? Versus blaming your child, versus doing that. And every miserable person that I know, and trust me when I say that, literally every miserable person that I know is constantly finding somebody else to blame, right? Somebody else is wrong, somebody else is to be blamed. It's like a constantly, I've noticed this about people that are miserable, not successful, so on and so forth, right? So that is something that I've seen. The other thing, Arunima, that I was going to kind of the the big way in which you can change the um, way you go about living is
Mm-hmm.
to lower your expectations,
Mm-hmm.
literally to the point where you have no expectations of other people, right? That is your north star, is where you don't have any expectations of anyone, right? Which is very difficult to achieve, right? That thing where you don't have any expectations of anyone. But when you lower your expectations of what are you expecting somebody else. I remember we having this conversation a long time back, right? And the broad context, if you remember, was you telling me about but I expect my, say, a parent to be a certain way. And
Right.
then on further inquiry we probably realized that that expectation that you had of a parent being a certain way probably came from movies that you watched, right? You get what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
right? Or a certain relationship that you saw that your friend had with a certain parent, right? And that was your expectation of how one of your parents needs to be. And then we realize that, hey, that's quite a kind of wrong way to look at stuff, right?
Yeah.
To have this expectation of their based on what you have seen. They don't even know possibly that that's your
Correct.
expectation. Isn't that so funny? Right?
Correct.
That they don't even know, they have no clue that that is your expectation of them.
Yeah.
And you have that expectation, and clearly they're not living up to that expectation because they don't know it, and they're probably not that kind of a person as well. And you can improve. You can't expect everybody else to cater to you, right? But you would probably live in so much of angst. I'm not saying you were, but it would
Yeah.
probably irritate you or whatever, because you didn't have that. And just the realization of saying, Okay, that is so damn silly, right? Of saying that how can I have this expectation of my parent when it's a construct that I've made in my head based on what I've seen and watched. They don't even know about it, right? And they are a certain personality which is probably the bang opposite of that. And
Correct.
I and the minute you say no, 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 that's not my expectation of you. My expectation of you is like minimal, right? And I've told you what that expectation is that you need to have.
Yeah.
The expectation that you need to have of most people is not just don't be cruel, right? Don't be cruel, and don't actively try to sabotage, right? So if you have parents, a sibling, you get what, a friend
Yeah.
or whatever, who are not actively trying to sabotage you, right? They're not actively trying to cause harm to you. That's all that you need. Right? That's
Yeah.
all the expectation that you need to have, right? And if they're actively trying to sabotage you and causing you harm, like actively meaning
Right.
harm, I'm not saying, say a parent saying, oh, you need to find a husband, Arunima, right? Not a parent saying that to you, because their
Yeah.
intent is not to cause harm to you. They're worried about it, so they're trying to kind of push you in a direction where you find companionship, because they know how important companionship is. Also, they're probably trying to do it because of the societal norms towards stuff, right? So you need to understand the space that they're coming from and give them the benefit of doubt. I don't mean that your expectation of
Yeah.
everybody here needs to be, if they're not actively trying to sabotage me, actively trying to cause harm for the sake of causing harm to me, that's all people around me, that's all that I'm expecting from you, right? I'm not expecting anything else from you. And anything over and above that I get from you, I'm going to be so damn grateful for it, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to celebrate every small little thing that I get over and above you being cruel, and trying to sabotage me, right? I'm going to celebrate that thing and say, wow, right? I'm so lucky to have that. And that is, again, a great basis of living your entire life, right? Having very low expectations of everybody else, and I won't even say have very high expectations of yourself, right? A lot of people will say have low expectations of people, you set goals for yourself, right?
Mhm.
But the only expectation that you need to have of yourself, the gold north star of expectations for yourself is, I need to live a life where I'm feeling pleasant from the inside,
Correct.
right? I'm feeling good from the inside, right? I genuinely want that over a long sustained period of time. That's an amazing expectation to have from yourself, right? Because every other expectation is useless if you don't meet that primary expectation that you have.
When we talk about expectations, and we've discussed this earlier also,
Yeah,
there's this idea of standards, right?
yeah,
That you, and let's take a very easy example, because
yeah,
the company you keep obviously
yeah,
directly impacts how you are as a person and how you develop as a person. So
yeah,
let's just take company, and let's take friends.
yeah,
Now if you're not going to have any expectations from your
yeah,
friends,
yeah,
right? How do you and basically you're having very low standards
yeah,
around that.
yeah,
How can you expect yourself to grow? How do you expect yourself to mentally and intellectually and emotionally grow, right? If you are not, if you have just low expectations, because then what would happen is you'll end up befriending people who don't really add value.
yeah.
Or
You've missed, it's a great question that you've brought up, because yeah, I'm glad that you have the confusion. Many people could have that too, right? Understand the difference between low expectations and low standards to start
Mhm.
with, right? So it's a great point that you've made, right? In the areas where you can choose, you can't choose,
Mhm.
unfortunately, who your parents are and your immediate family members are.
Right.
At least amongst the family members, you can choose as to who you want to be close to, who you don't want to be close to. But parents are something that you're there with, and in turn your kids are something that you're there with. Your spouse is something that you take that decision, and you're likely to have ideally just one spouse. But even if you have two, is now it's, I think, right, two is what a lot of people also are having. Not ideal, but well, it's life. But yeah, I would, having low expectations of people doesn't mean that you admit anyone and everyone into your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't mean that you give them admission. Be very, very careful about the kind of people that you surround yourself with. That is extremely important. But once you surround yourself with relatively good people,
Mm. Okay.
have very low expectations of them, right? That's something which is important. But for sure, right, surrounding yourself with good people is important. There's a very nice quote that says you become the average of the five people you spend the most time with. That's why
Right.
choose them wisely, right? So again, do not mistake having low expectations of people with giving admission to people into your life without a check, so to speak, right?
Correct.
And yeah, definitely knock the people out where possible. Or sometimes it's not just about knocking people off, right? That's a wrong way again of putting it. You may have a few I love that Airtel ad that says "हर एक friend जरूरी होता है." I love that ad, right? Because "हर एक friend जरूरी होता है" means that different friends and family members will bring different positives to the table,
Correct.
and in turn will bring different negatives to the table as well, right? And your job, as your not your job, a good way of kind of conducting yourself is, when you're dealing with these people, try to focus on the positive. Try to extract the positive out of them, try to focus on the positive and keep the negative aside. Now, this all applies to people that are not actively trying to cause you harm and actively trying to sabotage
Correct.
you. And there are very such few people actually, right, that are actively working at sabotaging you or harming you. Because, and there are very such few people because most people aren't concerned about you. They're so busy concerned about themselves that they don't have the time. So if some of you all feel that, oh, I have so many people around me that are actively trying to sabotage me and causing harm, that's untrue. You're not going to have that situation itself, because most people don't give yourself so much of importance by thinking that people are trying to actively sabotage you all
Yeah.
the time, right? But you could have a few of these people for sure, right, that you may those rare people, and it's good to keep them off totally at bay. But even what you consider a good set of people to hang out with, they will have their positives, they will have their negatives. You
Correct.
know that, okay, this person is a good person to have, but I need to minimize my contact and discussion with these people and meet
Mm-hmm.
every once in 3 months when all of us are meeting together, right? And they, because this person is great company in a group, but maybe not great company one on one. So
Correct.
in a way, use that relationship that way for yourself and that other person as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to spend all the time with that person, and every friendship is not the same, right? So just to reiterate my point, have low expectations of everyone,
Correct.
right? And the only expectation should be, don't actively sabotage, or if somebody's causing harm, that's a bad situation. But over and above that, I'm not expecting anything, because the minute you have expectations of other people, they are out of your control. And then when
Yeah.
you have expectations, especially high expectations of them, then you will tend to get disappointed, right?
Correct.
And then when you tend to get disappointed with them, that will cause angst in your relationship with them, because you had a certain expectation of them, right? I just want to share one thing, and you know who I'm talking about, but I don't want to, you possibly know. I have a family member, right? Let's just call him my uncle, right? And he has a daughter that is extremely, a very, like, on every ground that you would think of, she's a tick mark, right? So she's well educated, like she's found a career path where she's happy and doing well. She has great, a spouse that's good, da, da, da. So on every possible parameter that she can think of, this person is a great. But my uncle has some weird expectations, his expectations, which are here, right? And if you ask me, she surpasses all, but it's just a wrong set of expectations that are there, right? Expectations like, um oh, in your profession, you shouldn't be going out at night,
Mm-hmm.
or you shouldn't be dancing at somebody's sangeet, because you are in a certain profession where, right? And this this person loves going out, loves it. So when you hold these wrong expectations for your daughter based on some weird beliefs that you have in your head, which you don't even know, and then your daughter turns out to be and there's nothing wrong in what she's doing. She's, as a matter of fact, she's the one who's right here. But then there is this big gap that you have, because you have all kinds of expectations about your daughter, and because you have all kinds of those expectations about your daughter, then she's not living up to those expectations. They're wrong expectations to start with, so she shouldn't be living up to them. But the person is not matching with that, then you're disappointed, and then that causes angst, or that causes differences between this and his daughter. And it only comes from wrong expectations, right? So me and my wife, we keep discussing what our expectations of our son are, and literally our expectations are don't die. Right? So don't do something to yourself that is going to cause you to die, or huge physical harm to yourself. Right? Don't put yourself in that situation. So that's our number one expectation. And our number two expectation is, do not do drugs. Right? And do not be an alcoholic. And you get what I'm trying to say. Don't
Yeah,
become an addict. Right? Because that's a real slippery slope, and then there's literally no coming out of it. So don't put yourself in any physical harm. Don't do crazy things that are, don't get into a car with somebody that's drunk. Right? Don't do stupid stuff like that. Don't take unnecessary risks, and don't do that. Beyond that, right, I don't have expectations of, oh, this is who he should marry. Oh, I hope he's straight and not gay. We have no expectations, right? Because you could turn out to be anyway, and we don't want to hold on to some image of how this person should turn out, then be disappointed with them. And then in turn there being angst between us, right? We don't want any. Now, this doesn't mean that as a parent we don't want him to develop certain skills. We want him to develop certain skills. We want him to develop certain behaviors. We want all those things, right? To be there. But it's not like hinged on this big expectation of, yaar, ye na yehi banna chahiye, agar nahi ye. No, 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 no. We need to do our hard work in terms of inculcating the right values. We need to do the hard work in terms of, giving him the appropriate skills that are required. We need to do that hard work as parents. But not with this kind of big expectations that we set, that will then lead to disappointment and sadness.
correct.
No, no, no. That's not your, that's not how we need to kind of structure ourselves, right? That's in any kind of situation, that's a wrong thing, right? So again, just like we said about the spouse thing, right? Like, what is your action point for today, right? What are the things that you can do to start becoming a better spouse, start becoming a better parent, start becoming a better child, start becoming a better family member, start becoming a better friend. Right? And again, like I said, there is, all these things are about balancing.
Yeah,
That's one of the topics that we need to come to. The key to you we probably went off guard from where we started, right? And that's the beauty of philosophy in some way. But you started by saying, how do I live a peaceful life, right? Like, what's the how of it? And that's not going to take one class. That's the entire topic of every
yeah,
class, right? Every class is going towards that one topic of how does that lead to me feeling more peaceful. But if I have to tell you, one of the things that is supremely important from the point of view of finding peace in your life is having a balanced life.
correct.
Right? That is a key. Like, literally write that word down, saying that having a balanced life is the key to having a good life. Right? And again, this you may think, oh, does that mean work life balance? Yes, one of the aspects is work life balance, but work life balance does not mean leaving your office at 5:30. Right?
Yeah,
That's not what it means. Overall, in your work and life, you must have a great balance between the two. And that could mean you working 5 days a week, till late, and then totally cutting your weekend off. That could mean phases in your career that you're working really hard and focusing on that, and then other phases where you balance stuff out, and then other phases where again the balance changes. But you need to constantly balance, live a balanced life will lead to you living an emotionally stable, being in an emotionally
correct.
stable place, which will lead to you, right? And if you only optimize your life for one thing, right, if you only optimize your life for money, and if not for anything else, that is unlikely, right, for you to live an emotionally stable kind of peaceful life, right? So key word in this discussion is kind of
Balance.
living a balanced life.
I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
I mean, because this is a topic of its own, and we need to
Mm,
and I think we want to discuss this in the next session, because
yeah.
there are a lot of things I want to share and ask there.
Yeah.
Um, but as a personal learning, and you know this, in the past 3 years, this balanced life is something that has been my biggest area of development.
Yeah.
And that I've now that I've achieved some form of balance, it's really you can see the impact that it's had on,
Yeah.
just my mental well-being and
Mm,
overall well-being. So this is something I'm very
yeah.
interested and passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, Also, just the previous topic that we were talking about, again, just as a personal learning, because I'm someone who, first of all, totally confused the ideas, or intertwined rather, the ideas of standards and expectations. So
Yeah.
I'm someone who holds high standards and expectations of myself and everyone around me, and that has in the
Yeah.
past led to problems, led to a lot of misery in my own
Yeah.
self.
Yeah.
And the moment I stopped and I let go of all expectations,
Yeah.
apart from the bare minimum expectations, which
Yeah.
then I communicate to the people that
Yeah.
this is my
Yeah.
bare expectation of you, but beyond that,
Mm,
whatever.
yeah.
Again, I've just been so much at peace, and
Yeah.
I've just generally been happy, because I'm no longer being disappointed on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm holding that person, whoever
Yeah.
it may be,
Yeah.
to some sort of defined expectation in my head, which, like
Yeah.
you said, I have not even communicated. And
Yeah.
at that point, because I was not as mature, I didn't think things through. Probably didn't take into account so many other things of the person's background, or just everything around it,
Yeah.
what those person's beliefs are.
Yeah.
So we need to realize that it's not so black and white,
Yeah.
and there are these other factors involved. So very important, the expectation point that you
Yeah.
talked about.
I'm glad. Yeah.
We've because we've just got about 10 minutes to 11:30, and then a few above that. Could you could you just go into a slightly, just elaborate a little bit on, if you had to tell someone in 10 minutes, how do I design a balanced life?
Okay. So, yeah, good. Right. Good. Thank you for getting me back on track as usual. Right. So we started with relationships, and then
Yes.
maybe as we go along, we'll kind of move into
Yeah.
different things. Right. So this is kind of peace, right?
Yeah.
And right, uh, we call let's just call this baseline level of peace, right? So one very important aspect, like we discussed here, is the relationships that you would have, and we had all the relationships. The other important aspect of this, of finding this thing, is career,
Hmm.
right? And what I mean by career is having a productive pursuit. That's all I mean, productive pursuit, right? So
What does
you
that
could,
mean?
productive pursuit means that now you, as a young professional, you're really building your career in the learning and development space, right? Right. So but somebody could be um, somebody that's been a kind of housewife for a long time, and probably not had a career, and now is lost and saying, oh, how can I start a career 15 years into me being a housewife and kind of raising two kids? Yeah, no, your productive pursuit could be your interest in baking, for example. I know
Hmm.
it's a cliche, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? So you could say, I thought of baking because of late we've been getting these amazing cakes from people that aren't running professional bakeries, right? They're home bakers, and we've been getting like the best kind of
Hmm.
cakes from them in Goa, who are friends, and they found a productive pursuit, which they become so passionate about. So it's not really like a set career path that they set on, but it's something that they really made a productive pursuit for themselves, right? For just to give you another example, for a retired person, that productive pursuit could be an NGO that he starts working working at, right? Or it could be photography, or you get what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
Or he starts learning something in some other domain where he makes a productive pursuit out of it, right? So your broad kind of, you need to have, for a kind of balanced peaceful life, um, you really need to think of um, having a good career, right? And having good productive pursuits where you improve on, right? You have a question, you can ask the question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basis what you explained about
Yeah.
productive pursuit, what's the difference between that and having a hobby or an interest?
Yeah, you could have a hobby or an interest, but it could be that as well, right? A productive pursuit is that. uh, Typically when it comes to a productive pursuit, I would kind of put it in the broad category of what we would call work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would put it in that broad category, because having hobbies also are very important, that may not necessarily be um, I think most hobbies also could be productive pursuits, but they don't technically fit into a productive pursuit category, right? You could be a bird watching, could be your hobby. It's not really a productive pursuit. I don't quite know how bird watching is different from watching Netflix, right? I don't get the difference between it myself. Maybe there is, which I haven't realized. Are you getting my point of what I'm trying to say? Maybe the bird watching is nature makes you feel good. Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
Netflix also makes me feel good. You get what I'm trying to say? So by productive pursuit, I mean something which is more connected to work and you being a productive human being, right? In some way.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, maybe that requires more thought, right? But
Sure.
just coming back to this thing, right? So I think if you want to live a good peaceful life, one area is to really understand and get better at the relationships, and there's a whole list there.
Yeah.
The second area is to really ensure that you, whatever work you're doing, whatever career, whatever productive pursuits that you have there, you are making good, you are making progress there,
Correct.
right? And that's the broad word, right? You're making progress there and you're growing there, right? So that growth in those areas are very, very important, right? So another big basket of, if you want to be peaceful, and here you, most of these things that I'm talking about are all that I like to call myself like an urban philosopher, right? Because only understand urban problems. I've always lived in urban life. So if you ask me, oh, but this context of what you're sharing here doesn't kind of doesn't make sense 50 years back in another context, and I'll be like, hey, you're right. Yeah, maybe it doesn't make sense
Yeah.
50 100 years back. Maybe it doesn't make sense in a village context because I've not really lived ever in those contexts, right? But in our urban context of what we live in, having your finances and money, understanding your finances, money, is another kind of very, very important aspect, right? And again, it's so sad that so many people kind of have no knowledge around how to manage their finances, how to manage their money. They have real no kind of knowledge of it, and it is very, very basic knowledge. You don't even need to be a financial expert kind of to know, to be aware of such things, right? So I guess that is one. Relationships is one area which is very, very important, because this is got you into so many different things, from your spouse to your child to parenting, like we said here, to your overall family and friends, right? So many different areas here that you talk about, your career, right? Your ability to make your sorting out your finances, and then sorting out what I call your own
Hmm.
beliefs and your mindset, right? So this kind of having your own beliefs, mindset, that is kind of improving on that becomes something which is very, 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 very important, right? um, does that make sense to you, or?
Yeah. So, and so
Yeah,
we've talked about relationship, we've talked about
yeah,
career, we've talked about your finances and money,
yeah,
managing that, and your own beliefs and your mindset,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. So I think if you like really get people around I'm actually looking at my phone because I'm trying to find something which I'd written, which I want to
Mhm.
share. But if you really get a handle on these things, right, in your life, um, if you get a handle on these things on your life, so many of your problems are sorted, right? So many of your problems are sorted if you get a handle on these things of your life.
Correct.
Um, right, and if you don't get a handle on these things on your life, so many of your problems are there. Right now, I'll just kind of let me elaborate slightly on this
Yeah.
thing, right? If you don't have, like, let's just take your career, right? Now, if you are working in a job role
Hmm.
that does not is not aligned with your interests and your strengths,
Correct.
right? You are going to spend a lot of time, a lot of your work time, not feeling that good,
Yeah.
right? But if you align your job role to something which is in your area of interest plus your area of strength, right? Something that you're good at, you're going to spend a whole lot of time enjoying largely your work, right? If you are going to if you don't have the right uh, the literally the organization that you kind of work for, right? If you work in an organization, that's great, right? That really ensures that you feel good, that does you so much of good, right? If you don't want to be working with a boss that's a miserable boss to work with, because that's going to take so a lot of thought is required here on the kind of career front, for you to sort stuff out here. And
Correct.
maybe we can do a whole kind of session on this thing. There's so much to talk about, right, when it comes to these things. But
Yeah.
right, you really need to sort yourself out on the work front, starting from just saying that, oh, does the role that I'm doing align with my strengths and interest? Is
Mhm.
this the right kind of organization that I'm working in? Am I aligned to working for more a startup or a smaller company? Are these the right kind? So this that requires a lot of thought, right? Then in your career, if you want to start feeling good, you have to have a sense that you're making progress,
Yeah.
right? That you're growing, and that growth does not always need to be in terms of just the money. The growth can be in terms of the challenges that your money is, of course, the important part. I've put it as a whole section in itself, right? But the entire kind of intellectual pursuit of being stimulated in your head,
Correct.
right? Being stimulated and constantly being like, oh, this is a challenge that I have, and I'm facing that challenge, and I'm overcoming that challenge at work, and I'm involved in something during the day, that makes me feel good. So just so much of importance there on your career, right, to make progress in a steady good way after thinking stuff through. And if you have that part of your life sorted, isn't that going to make you feel much better and
So
at peace,
I
right?
I have a question here.
Yeah,
Um, in some situations, a person, because of their realities, may not have the option of pursuing a career or a job which aligns with their interest and their strengths,
yeah,
right? And like you said, if a person's in such a job role, they're going to
yeah.
feel, in simple words, they're going to feel miserable on a daily basis. How does a person who, like I said, is bound by their circumstances to be stuck in that kind of
Mhm.
job, how do they find peace?
Correct. Acceptance, right?
Okay.
So a lot of times you'll be in a situation where what you're saying is true for whatever amount of reasons. If I'm talking today to, say, somebody who's 45 or 50 years old, right, and is
Mm-hmm.
doing a job and is listening to this lecture, and
Mm-hmm.
he'll say, listen, screw you, yeah, how do you expect me to figure this out right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, yeah, you're absolutely right about it. You should have figured this out, 20 years back, possibly. You're right, but you're in a situation where you have EMIs, you need to pay the bill, and that's what we talk about, balancing of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Balancing our life means that because you want the satisfaction of being able to send your child to a good school, you are going to compromise on your passion, and
Mm.
that's completely okay. There's
Mm.
nothing wrong with, you get my point?
Yeah.
Because the modern world teaches you that, oh, you shouldn't compromise. Bullshit. Of course you
Mm.
should compromise, right? If you are an adult, you learn that being able to compromise on the right things is a very important part of being
Correct.
a mature adult that wants to be at peace, right? Compromise, acceptance is a very, very important part of that. And because, in life you're doing trade-offs, right? So this 50-year-old person who's possibly listening to this lecture has another passion, but he's trading off his passion for the good of his because he wants to live in a better apartment, right?
Yeah.
And well, there is nothing wrong with that, because he wants to secure himself more financially. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? So that's a trade off that you're doing. But while doing that trade off, if you don't accept the reality of your situation, you're going to be miserable again,
Mm. Got
right?
it.
So you need to say that, hey, I should have figured this out 20 years back. I didn't figure this out 20 years back. I'm in this situation right now. If you may watch a movie that shows this 50-year-old changing his job, and listen, screw that bullshit, right? Stop watching that, right? You need to have a sense of reality when you're doing anything,
Correct.
and one of the things of being in reality is to know, hey, I have built a certain amount of expertise in this thing that I don't really enjoy.
Mhm.
That is probably not even my strength, but I've developed expertise, I have experience in this thing. And it's paying off the bills and is making me happy in so many other aspects of my life. So well, I need to accept that thing, possibly find, do my areas of interest over the weekend,
Correct.
right? Or find some ways to dabble in those areas of interest so that I feel good, right?
Mm.
About myself. I need to do those things, and I need to accept that that is my reality, and know that compromise is not a bad thing. Compromise is become a bad word in the modern world, and
Yeah.
it shouldn't be a bad word, right? The compromising is the essence of being a adult. It's a compromising is the essence of being a mature adult that wants to live a peaceful life, right? um,
So
it is really so. Yeah, so that's the key to it, right? I just want to say one last thing,
yeah.
right? You remember that I started off this kind of session by giving you Tyson Fury,
Mm.
right? And you guys should read up on Tyson Fury, right? I love that guy. So he had his career. Look at the four kind of circles that I've drawn, right? He had his career.
Yeah.
He's at the top of his game. He's got his money game sorted, right? I don't know whether he had his relationship game sorted. I don't know about that, right? Because just having a spouse and kids doesn't mean that you've got a good relationship with that, right?
Correct.
Right. The most easy thing to do is to make a kid. Well, it's the easiest for a man. It's much more difficult for the women to go through that entire process, right? But it's not like you need to be overtly intelligent to do that. Right. So that part. Now look at where he's screwed in this area.
Belief.
Right, so he's screwed in this area because he's got all these kind of wrong. He doesn't have the right belief, right mindset, and in spite of having probably at least two out of the four things sorted,
Mm.
he's still feeling miserable,
Yeah.
right? And then what changed is his own belief mindset changed about how he looked at the world, and then automatically the career is still there, the finances is still there, relationships have gotten better, and you are feeling better yourself, right? You're much
Yeah.
more feeling better about yourself. So all those things are there, right? So the point that I'm trying to make to you is the balance that we were talking about comes from these things. The compromise that we were talking about, you need to compromise one for the other and balance all these interests as well, right? So
Correct.
you need to balance your career with your family, you need to balance your career with your own mental peace in a way, right? You need to balance these kind of things that are there, right? Of course, the other boxes which are here, these are just, I've just given you four of the boxes. It's not like a complete box, right? So one big box is, I think, focus around your health, right? And in a subsequent class I'll tell you why it
Yeah.
may seem obvious. Why is your kind of health important, right? Both mental and physical. Why is it important? It may seem like an obvious answer, but there is a deeper kind of philosophical answer to why your health is so important, right? And why that is probably one of the first things that you need to focus
Correct.
on, right? And if you don't focus on that, then you will get all the other things. But if your health is screwed, then you're screwed, right? You look at a corona situation where, hey, you can have all the why is money important, right? Why is money important? Because if you get corona and it gets serious,
Yeah.
you need to have money, insurance, you need to have all these things so that you can get the best treatment possible. You can get admission at the best hospital you can possibly get to.
Correct.
Why? Because as a human being, while peace is what you should for, the other thing is don't die. Right? Because if you die, life is over, right?
Yeah.
This conversation is over if you die, right? So you want to, the ultimate bad outcome of life is death, right? And it seems like a simple thing, but the ultimate bad outcome of life is death, right? So that's why you shouldn't do anything risky, too risky, that will lead to you dying
Correct.
or lead to deep physical harm, because deep physical harm means you're not in good health, right? So why shouldn't you drunk drive? You shouldn't drunk drive because you'll kill yourself and others, or you'll severely injure yourself and others. That's why drunk driving is something that you shouldn't do. Are you getting my point of what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So there is a certain logic for why you shouldn't do anything. So if you get corona, um, you need to be secure financially, right?
Correct.
It could be through any means, but you should have the money to put you in a good hospital and take care of the treatment, which is there, right? That's why money is so important, right? And then hopefully you're in good enough health so that when something like that happens, your body can deal with that
Yeah.
kind of situation, right? And now this corona is way too complex for me to make a comment on that, because very, very healthy people, it's impacting them too. But in all situations in life, I think one thing is true, right? The healthier you are, the better you can deal with an ailment, right? So
Correct.
I think that's one fundamental sound logic anywhere that you can use. The healthier you are, the longer your life is likely to be, not guaranteed,
Yeah.
likely to be. The healthier you are, the lesser problems they are likely to have. That's the reason. And if like I forgot who said this, right? The hunger is the ultimate human problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're hungry, it actually causes you
Yeah.
physical pain, right?
Correct.
So hunger is the ultimate problem. But once hunger is solved, we create all other problems for ourselves, right?
Correct.
We solve hunger as a problem, because when you're hungry, you're not thinking of anything else, right? You're not thinking of career, you're just thinking of how do I sort the problem of hunger, right? But
Yeah.
once that is solved, we create all other problems for ourselves, right? Yeah. So therefore, coming back to this thing, that this is a entire balance that we need to do. Life is a balancing act between all these things, right? And
I.
so just 1 minute, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to state this because I'd written this out earlier,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of saying that being a good friend doesn't mean that if your friend calls you and wants to talk 1 hour a day every day, that you're available for that friend to talk to them 1 hour a day every day, saying that, oh, I need to be a good friend, so I need to,
Mm-hmm.
right? But maybe being a good friend means that when your friend is gone through a tragedy,
Mm-hmm.
you're there to talk to them 1 hour a day through that period. You get my point? But if they need to do that every day of the year,
Correct.
right? And then you cannot cater to that need to them. Why can't you cater to that need to them? Because if you keep talking to them 1 2 hours a day, you're going to compromise on all the other areas of your life. And if you
Correct.
don't balance all the other areas of your life, then again that ultimate objective of yours of ensuring that you're living a peaceful life will not happen,
Correct.
right? So it's important to give time to your children, it's important to give time to your spouse, but it's also important to give time to yourself,
Yeah.
right? And if you just give time to your spouse, your children, everything, and don't give time to yourself, again, you're not balancing stuff well, right? If you only give time to your family life and you don't give your career importance, right, that won't make you feel good, because your career, again,
Correct.
your career and productive pursuits is it's an individual pursuit in a way, right? And that entire thing, when you're stimulated, when you have a goal, when you, that makes you, keeps you engaged in some kind of a way, right?
Correct.
And that becomes very, very kind of important to that. So yeah, these are just a few of the dimensions that are very, very important for you. I won't even say master. These are very, very
Yeah.
important for you to constantly educate yourself on and keep getting better and better and better at. Because the better and better you kind of get at these things, the more, that's how you eventually get to a life where you're feeling overall at peace, overall good
Correct.
about yourself, right? If you don't have that, then that's not going to
Um,
work.
so the example that you shared of Tyson Fury, I like that because it gives you with this image in mind,
Yeah,
it gives you such a clear idea because, like you said, 4 out of 5 things were great,
yeah,
but the fifth thing was just not the way it was supposed to be, and that impacted, that brought him down,
yeah,
right? So I think it's a good, like you use the word balance. I also want to add another word to the mix, which is
yeah,
coexist. So
yeah,
all these points need to
yeah,
coexist with one another
yeah,
at, like, and you said, at every moment of the day.
yeah.
I just, before we sort of summarize and come to a close, there's this movie called Inside Out. I
Mm,
don't know if you've seen it. It's an animated movie. It's been made largely to help children understand emotions and mental health. So it's beautifully made, where it's done in a way where they can really grasp the concept of emotions and how to sort of manage your emotions. In which they show this, like, basically your brain is like the headquarter, right? Or rather, your sense of being is the headquarter, and it's
yeah,
being held into place by these islands.
yeah,
And I would like to sort of relate this diagram that you've drawn to the same thing. So
yeah,
being peaceful,
yeah,
and it's like a floating island, and it's
yeah.
literally being held by these strings.
Mm,
So if even one collapses,
yeah,
you can imagine the whole thing will just fall down,
yeah,
because they
yeah,
all need to be sort of up in the air,
yeah,
right? And if one of the strings is cut off, and
yeah.
one island falls, your whole thing is going to fall down. So I think it's very
Absolutely.
important to just keep that in mind, saying that,
Yeah,
these are the areas largely that are important for me to be living a balanced, a happy, a peaceful
absolutely,
life.
absolutely.
And if I compromise, no, I wouldn't use the word compromise. If I don't pay attention to one of them,
Yeah,
and if I ignore it, is going to ultimately impact everything else.
absolutely.
um
I think that is you kind of put a summary on this in a beautiful way. But I just want to go back to one thing.
yeah.
I think everything in life starts with this being your biggest focus, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't get this thing right, which is your own belief, your own mindset, all the other things are going to get impacted by that one thing, right?
Correct.
And you're building your own mindset and belief system requires, if I have to give you one word, education,
mm,
right? You need to educate yourself on and I can discuss like a, we will through these classes discuss the belief system, right? Because if that
yeah.
belief system is not right around so many of these things, and the mindset is not right, you're going to get screwed on all other aspects of life,
Correct.
right? So really kind of developing your knowledge, skills, and attitude to start with, whether it's about dealing with your professional life or personal life, is supremely important,
Correct.
right? And again, being very mindful of what are your beliefs, right? What beliefs do I hold around so many areas? And you need to
Correct.
really then identify those beliefs that I have. And because if they're not right, then that becomes a problem, right? And of course, we've stated some of the beliefs here, right? One big belief, like we kept talking about today, is to say, is your fundamental belief where you're looking inwards,
Inwards.
right? Where your fundamental belief is around saying what, taking 100% responsibility and thinking, what do I need to do better, and not
Yeah.
blaming the world outside. That's one solid belief to start with, right? Another solid belief to start with is really believing, knowing, accepting, and in turn living with the belief that, oh my god, life is so short, fragile, and uncertain,
Correct.
right? Until you really incorporate this kind of belief in your mind very deeply, where you say life is so damn short, right? When we take the history of the planet, we just realize that we're literally here for a, like a blink of an eyelid, right? We're here for that
Yeah.
short a time. And if we spend that short a time in our overall kind of scheme of things miserably, that's not that the world is going to care, right? The world doesn't care about whether you live miserably or live happily, right? The world doesn't care about it. The world is got not. The world is going to exist irrespective whether you live miserably or happily, so to
Correct.
speak, right? But if your world starts when you are born and your world ends when you die, right? The world doesn't care, but your world starts when you are born and your world ends when you die, right? So in a way, that's the world that you are concerned with, and in that world, if you're going to live miserably, that's wrong. And why will you do that when you don't have the right belief that the ultimate objective of life is to live peacefully?
Correct.
Because life is so short, fragile, and uncertain, right? So a lot of these thoughts and beliefs, which we will lay out as we go along in these classes, right, that you need to build this belief for you to kind of truly be get to a place of peace, right? If you have the wrong beliefs about relationships, you are going to get into trouble. If you have the wrong beliefs about your career, you are going to be in trouble. If
Yes.
you have the wrong beliefs about money, you're going to be in trouble, right? Wrong beliefs, right? I have so many people that I know that draw such a big distinction between kind of money that they have made and money that they've probably inherited, right? They kind of think of that so wrongly, and I've shared this with somebody in the past, where I say, well, if you go to buy a Coke, right? He's got no idea whether you made that money yourself or whether you inherited. He says, pay me $20, take the
Correct.
Coke, right? um, he doesn't care about whether you got it from a lottery, you did it when you go to buy a car, the shopkeeper doesn't care where you got the money from, because money doesn't do anything by itself, right? So there are so many philosophical beliefs that you need to know about money if you want to live a good
Yeah.
life, right? It's not just you need to know so much about that for you to know, this is what money is for, right? That's what we can discuss money in one of the sessions, right?
Right.
You're like, yeah, this is what money is for. And you may think, oh, but this sounds obvious, but yeah, this is so deep. This is what money is for. And if I have the wrong thoughts about money, this is what's going to happen, right? It's so crazy, right? That if you don't have the right thoughts around it, that's going to impact you so much. So I keep coming back to saying that the fundamental is your own belief,
Yeah.
your own mindset, your own thing, and then everything else is a result of that, right? Now I just want to, you can kind of work on doing a little bit of a summary before we end, but Yogesh has a question point
Yes.
which I'd like to address because I think it's a very interesting one. In your opinion, productive pursuit is something which helps you earn money, but any hobby or anything which makes you happy, relaxed, satisfied, which are non-monetary, are also productive. Yeah, that's the whole kind of discussion I think Arunima and myself were having, right? They could also be productive. There is kind of no doubt about it, but at least in that broad category that I am talking about, I mean work career, right? Sorting yourself out on the career part. And I also think it's very important for people to have hobbies, right? So I
Yeah.
would possibly put them in another circle of saying that have hobbies, right? Having hobbies is so important. I have a cousin, Arunima, I'll tell you who I'm talking about later, but both Arunima and myself have a cousin that which is good in a way. He has only two hobbies, right? His one hobby is his work, and his other hobby is politics, but not talking about politics. He's actually involved, right, in politics, right? So those are his only two hobbies. Now, in a situation where the world is locked down, where he can't really work and can't really do that, right, he feels so
Yeah.
lost, right? Because he doesn't have any other, as compared to, even if you have a hobby of reading, or even if you have a hobby of enjoying movies or whatever, right? So that's very important, that you have
Correct.
interests beyond your career work. But when I'm talking about productive pursuits, what I mean I'm really thinking whether I mean something that you generate an income out of, right? I'm
Hmm.
not sure whether I mean that. I'd have to think about that a little more to to know whether
Correct.
that's what I mean. But I mean broadly stuff which is not just a serious career, but somebody even kind of making something craft related on a very small scale and selling it. You get what I'm
I
trying to say?
I think
Somebody, yeah.
I think anything that's intellectually stimulating for you
Mm.
as a person is, you would categorize that as productive.
I guess so.
Um,
I need to give that some more thought,
yeah.
right? When I use that word, I need to have more clarity, right? But Yogesh, I want to make another kind of point here that so both Arunima and myself, just 1 minute, I want to add. Okay, I want to use this, right? So Arunima and myself know this person that is one of those people. Let's just call him person A, right? And this person A is a person that is a man of kind of multiple talents, right? So he's good at a lot of things. He works in a sales role, and he's quite good at this kind of sales role, right? He leads a team, and he's quite naturally, he's a gifted person, right? So he leads this team well. Now this person A also happens to be a good singer and a good musician, right? Also happens to be. So this person, when he kind of first got associated with us, possibly one of his ambitions was to say, oh, um this is my real hobby, my real passion, this is my number one kind of passion that I have, right? Is to do this. Yeah, just because something is your number one passion doesn't mean that you pursue that passion.
Correct.
Right? Because it may be your passion, but you may not have the requisite talent that is required to make your passion into something that pays you, right? And pays you well, right? That may not be the case, that could happen. So sometimes it's important that you have a career, right? Right, that possibly helps you bring in the money that will help you live a decent
Mm.
lifestyle, while you also have hobbies that you pursue to the side. But the
Mm.
minute you make this side thing your main thing, right, and you don't have the requisite talent for that, and you make your side thing the main thing, then there is pressure to make money of it.
Mm.
You start losing interest in that you start putting pressure on your hobby that you have. And then when you put pressure on that hobby stops being as enjoyable that as it would have been otherwise, right? So again, the modern day entire thing of saying, okay, what is your biggest what is the thing that you're most passionate about, right? And if you select saying, movies are the thing I'm most passionate about, oh, that means you need to become an actor. No, right? You need to really know that, okay, there's lots of study to be done there, right? In terms of saying that, okay, if I have to become an actor, do I have money that I've inherited, right? Now, if I've inherited a lot of money, go for it, boy, go try to become an actor, because you don't really need to think about money. But, if you come from a family where your means are limited, and you need to, because we've discussed the importance of having a balanced life, right? It's not just having
Yeah.
a career, but just other aspects of your life need to be balanced, and in turn you need to make the right kind of compromises where you need to, in order to find this balance. But people are being sold on this wrong notion that, hey, this is your number one passion, please pursue that passion. And I know just so many broke
Yeah.
dancers, right? Dancing was their passion, and somebody sold them on this story that, oh, you need to make it as a career. And they don't realize, hey, that's a short-lived career, right? That's a career that possibly doesn't pay that much. So just because it's your passion, that doesn't mean that you should follow it if you come from a family that doesn't have means, right? And that's why, by the way, your parents always encourage you to become doctors and engineers, right? There's a reason for that, of why they did that. They weren't stupid to tell you to do it, right? But yeah, you get my point of what I'm trying to say, right? The point that I'm trying to say is that, A, you need to have a career. Number two, ensure that you cultivate, not cultivate. discover what your hobbies are, right? It's difficult to even cultivate them. Hobbies are something that you either have it or you don't have it.
Right.
Right, I tried to cultivate habits. I realized that was a hobby, and that was quite a stupid thing to do, because they didn't genuinely come from within, right? And you need to genuinely have hobbies, which you have. But just because you have a certain hobby doesn't necessarily mean that you need to turn that into a profession, because
Correct.
sometimes just having your hobby to the side where you just enjoy the hobby is amazing, and something else could be your career that kind of sorts out your money aspects and all those aspects, and then you find a beautiful kind of balance between all these things. And I can more or less tell you that the person that we're talking about now, because he has a good career going, and he's got, he also has his passion to the side where he'll probably sing over the weekends for his family and friends, sometimes sing professionally as well, right? But there's no pressure on it, right, in
Correct.
order to do it. And
I
yeah,
think if you just sort of think back to the diagram that we drew earlier, which is,
yeah,
out of which money was an important,
yeah,
island,
yeah,
right? So if you think of, if just put simply, if you think about this, if you don't know how to, if you don't have the resources to
yeah,
sort of convert your hobby into
yeah,
career,
yeah,
you're not going to be able, your financial or your money island is not going
yeah,
to stay up,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So unless this is sorted, you can't do this. So like you said,
yeah,
if you have an inheritance,
yeah,
you're free to do that, because this won't get
yeah,
impacted by you pursuing your
yeah,
hobby. But if you know that
yeah,
if I pursue my hobby, I may even have the talent, but I know that the chances of possibly getting successful there,
yeah,
or really reaping in a lot of money through that, is not going to be a possibility for me, and I have no other backup plan when it comes to
yeah,
money.
yeah,
Unfortunately, that would have to remain as your hobby and
yeah,
not an actual career.
yeah, yeah.
And you
Like 100%, right? A
Yeah.
hundred, 100%. Um, yeah, I hope this is a lot of kind of practical wisdom for people, right? Uh, Often in the modern world, in some cases, money is given a lot of importance, and you have a whole bunch of people that won't give it any importance. And neither is money the most important thing, neither is it the least important thing, right? It is very important, and it's very important to sort yourself on those things, because I just know so many people then who simply, without being thoughtful, start doing things and then don't realize kind of what they're getting into, and how, and that's why these kind of, I guess, sessions are important in a way, to help bring clarity to people. But yeah, never underestimate the importance of money and having your finances sorted, right? Never underestimate the importance of that. And like how it's coming to you doesn't matter that much, as long as you have that
Yeah.
kind of security, um, which is there, right? um, yeah. Oh my god, we're at 12 o'clock
12.
already, Arunima, and I don't even know what we've spoken about. We've
I
spoken
do.
about so many things. You do? Okay.
Yeah.
So just my suggestion to you is, and everybody else, we've got 20 odd people on this. I'm assuming y'all are, I hope y'all are enjoying these conversations that are so rare, right? So yeah, first request to all of y'all is, Arunima is going to kind of summarize what she thinks are some of the key aspects of what we've discussed during this session, in the box, in the chat box, whatever your 2 or 3 biggest takeaways are from today's session. Please put down your 2 or 3 biggest takeaways, because if you're not going to really, if you're just going to listen and not really try to bring those things into action, and if you have to bring something into action, first you need to know that these are the things that I'm taking away from this session, right? And then you can start to put them into action. So while Arunima puts her thoughts together, you guys can start putting your takeaways together and start putting them in the chat box. So yeah, Arunima, whenever you're ready to go, you
Yes.
can you can start.
Okay, so we began our session with a revisit to the first, actually to the main idea, which is what is the purpose of life, which is
Yeah,
to live a peaceful life, a life of
yeah,
peace,
yeah,
where most of the time you are feeling nice, content, and good.
yeah,
Most of the time you're sort of experiencing the baseline level of peace,
yeah, Yeah.
right? And that's going to go up and down,
Yeah.
depending on the circumstance.
Yeah.
So we established that, and again, just this is something we'll be revisiting and talking
Yeah.
about in
All the
almost
time.
every session, because
Yeah.
that's the key to all of this.
Yeah.
Then we briefly discussed a few points on how do you not briefly, how do you uh, design a life of peace, or how do you basically attain peace in your life,
Yeah.
starting with removing things in your life that cause misery.
Yeah.
So that will help you move a little bit closer to peace,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Cultivating or the right mindset or beliefs
Yeah.
is also what is the main key to living
Yeah.
a life of peace.
Yeah.
Okay. Realizing that, and this is realizing that putting in the hard work today is needed to reap the benefits or the rewards in the long term.
Yeah.
So yes, you need to remove things out of your life which cause you misery, but you also need to understand there's a
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah.
You might be in a little, you'll be a little unhappy doing that today, but you
Yeah.
know that in the long term is going to give you happiness and
Yeah.
peace.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to evaluate that and then make decisions accordingly.
Yeah.
We talked about the main. I'm just going to jump a little ahead, so it's
You
going to
just
help.
you're doing such a lovely job, Arunima, of summarizing it, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Go on.
So I'm going to jump ahead and say that. So we've established that to have a life of peace, there are these few key factors, starting with your relationships,
Yeah.
your career, your own mindset and belief, your health, finances and money, and cultivating, rediscovering habits and hobbies and interests. Sorry.
Yeah.
So when we spoke about relationships, which
Yeah.
we'll explore further in another class, we
Yeah.
talked about largely your family, your spouse, partner, and your friends.
Yeah.
So how do you basically be a good family member, a good spouse, a good partner, a good friend?
Yeah.
All right. And one
And
of the things,
just also, how do you the a good word is, how do you manage all these
manage.
things, right? How do you
Correct.
manage a good relationship with your parents? How do you manage? Because again, the reason why I use the word manage is because you are always going to have limitations of time, and
Correct.
there are always going to be constraints around all these things, because you need to balance so many other aspects of your life, right?
Correct.
So within that balance, how do you ensure that you build a good quality of relationship with each one of these kind of
Correct.
stakeholders, in a sense, in our
Absolutely.
life, right?
Correct. And one of the main things there to be able to manage and sustain good relationships is to lower expectations of everyone around you. So that is an important point to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also that at every moment we need to ask ourselves that what can we be doing better. So look inwards
Yeah.
when it comes to everything. So how can I be a good spouse? How can I be a good parent? How can I be a good child? How can I be a good partner?
Yeah.
Okay. Just again, so you use the word, interestingly, you use the term KSA. So
Yeah.
again, if we draw our attention to the diagram that we have on the slide, how do
Yeah.
we basically build our knowledge, skills, and attitudes around all these factors? And
Yeah.
this is something we'll be discussing per island, quote unquote, in all of the sessions to follow.
Yeah.
Briefly, also, we talked about a career, where an important point or an important way to attain peace is if you align your job role to what your interests and your strengths are. But we are mindful of the fact that our realities and circumstances may not allow us to do that. In
Yes.
those situations, we need to practice acceptance.
Yeah.
And acceptance is an important part of peace.
Yeah.
And
And the
yeah,
acceptance also comes from saying that life requires trade-offs. So
correct,
while I couldn't do this, right, and pursue this further, or I can't make this change, it is for a good reason. And the
correct,
good reason that I have is I want to draw the pleasure of living in a house. I want to draw the
mm,
pleasure of being able to do better for my children, for my spouse. So there is a certain pleasure that comes out of that as well.
correct.
Yeah. Go on.
And then we also talked about beliefs. And some of the key beliefs, which again we'll be exploring further, are like we already covered, looking inwards rather than putting the blame on external factors, understanding and constantly reminding yourself that life is short, fragile, and uncertain. So again, taking decisions based on this sort of belief, and of course, last again, working towards peace. So I think I've tried to cover everything possible.
I
If I
think
missed out on anything.
Yes, I think you did a fantastic job of covering it. Okay, so yeah, while I am hoping that now you guys can kind of use the chat box to put some of your takeaways. Right, what are the things that you have learned and going to apply during the session? I think that's important. Arima, I think I just want to appreciate, since you're my family member and colleague and whatever, I want to appreciate the fantastic job you've done in a summarizing, asking the questions, steering the conversations, even when I blabber away to glory. So I think you've done a fantastic job there, and you've also done a fantastic. I keep telling you this, but yeah, I really am kind of proud of you, and I really have such a good time working with you. You're my favorite person to work with and talk
Thank
to.
you.
Yeah,
Ditto.
yeah. So I'm
That's
lucky to have you in my life.
while we wait for takeaways. One thing that I did want to
While
mention.
while we wait for takeaways, we're doing like major family what is it, PDA, right? Public
Yeah.
display of affection. We're
Correct.
doing major PDA, family cousin PDA. We're doing.
No, so one, like you said, and we briefly talked about gratitude, right? And how
Yeah,
important it is. And I've
yeah,
learned the lesson of that personally as well. But
yeah.
because in the past year, uh, because of coronavirus, I was stuck with you, and I was
Stuck, is
living.
that the word that you use? My
I was
God.
living
Uh,
I was living with you for 6 months, and one important learning, and I've shared this with you, I think, is we tend to take our closest family members for granted, right? So
yeah,
like you said, we don't tend to appreciate, and I like to think of myself as a very polite person, so I like to
yeah,
appreciate and thank people around me, but I would never do that to my own family members, because who
yeah,
does that, right? You
yeah,
don't
yeah,
need to
yeah,
do that. But I observed, because you, whenever your wife would make us coffee, you would
yeah,
always thank her for it, right? It
yeah,
was every single day for 6 months.
yeah,
And it just stuck with me, realizing that this is something that's being done every day, right?
yeah,
It's a routine, it's a part of our
yeah,
routine, but you would still, like, whatever we are doing, you would still stop that and then thank her for it.
yeah,
And like, at something I picked up, and then I just try to thank as much as possible
yeah,
people around me for even the smallest things, because I can imagine how nice it feels,
yeah,
right, when you're doing something mundane but
yeah,
you're being appreciated for it.
yeah,
um,
absolutely,
so you
absolutely,
feel good giving that
yeah,
appreciation. I'm sure the other person feels good as well.
yeah, yeah. uh, I have a suggestion during this series. Why don't you invite your cousins to share their success? No, no, no. Enough. I think there's enough of a Kamat
Family.
family banter happening here, Yogesh. Or cousins nahi chahiye. We will. We're going to keep innovating on these sessions and try to do different things, right? I'm glad that you observed that, and you probably picked that up. And not to blow my own trumpet, but you would have also kind of observed that, I'd say thank you, and at the end of the coffee, if the coffee was good, I would also bring that up, right? I'd
Yes,
say, hey, today the coffee is great, and it doesn't matter if it's 365 days the coffee is great. You take the effort to mention that the coffee is great, and this is not just to my spouse, right? Every time that we do meals together, and say, Komal, that was helping us out, in who was, you know my son's nanny, but who was helping us out with the cooking and stuff, every time she made something which was good, we appreciated her, saying that it's good. We appreciated
yeah,
her, saying that it's good. It didn't matter, right? Because the deepest human
correct,
need is the need to be appreciated, right? And we know that from a work context, but it's just so important from a personal context, to do that. And that one thing of appreciating people. And again, you need to we've spoken in the past about the difference between appreciation and flattery.
correct,
Flattery is when you're saying something positive about a person that you don't mean, or that is
correct.
untrue, right? Don't do that ever,
Yeah,
right? Don't flatter. But there's enough of, if you look at a person, there's enough of stuff that you will find that is positive and worth appreciating. And please go about appreciating that, and starting with the small things, right?
yeah,
Starting with the small things, that, if food is good, just open your mouth and say, hey, today the food is amazing. And even if you have to say that 7 days a week, twice a day, if the food is great, please say that, right? Because you are setting the ball rolling on creating a positive environment, for yourself and your family members, by just saying two positive things a day,
yeah.
right?
And
And
I
Yeah.
cannot tell you, whenever even if it's the smallest thing, if someone appreciates me or shares their gratitude, I think about that through the day. It like,
Yeah.
I'm just so happy that I received it. So it brightens my mood. So again, it's so important, and we don't do it enough, or we do it for, we don't do it for people who
Yeah.
actually matter the most,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, or things that matter the most.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and
Um,
it may feel awkward at the beginning when you suddenly
yeah.
start doing it, but later
Yeah.
on it becomes just like a part of
Yeah.
being that you just
Yeah.
appreciate.
Yeah, yeah. It's till everybody puts up their stuff, right? So, like, your father is a super successful kind of professional, right? He's really touched the heights of his of what his game is, and on a lot of these boxes, he's a big tick mark, right? But it's so strange that I remember, like for Ganesh Chaturthi, when all of us meet, right? And I was meeting and I was sitting and chatting with him, and I had like positive things to say about, how well he's done, and he was so kind of surprised, right? Because he was probably so not used to even one of his family members kind of acknowledging that, he's been a real kind of superstar on the professional front, even in the are you getting my point?
Yeah,
Right? Nobody kind of says that hey, you did well, and great, that's amazing that you did well, right? And we're lucky to be in a good family where that, nobody's actively ever trying to sabotage each other or whatever. But he was so shocked that somebody
yeah,
could just come and say, hey, I really appreciate all the hard work that you've taken, and that's quite commendable. And he's like, "Kida pishavana uleta," right? It's like, "Kida pishavana uleta" in Konkani means, what rubbish are you talking, right? Because
yeah,
he didn't literally kind of know how to process one of his family members saying a good word about his career. You get what I'm trying to say?
yeah,
It was like,
yeah.
it's strange for him.
It's not in our culture. It's not something we've
Yeah,
grown up doing. But again,
yeah,
that's why which is why it's something I picked up from you after
yeah,
like 25 years of existing.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that's like, I think, super important. We don't do
yeah.
it enough.
Yeah. So yeah, that's important. Anyway, we can go on and on and on. A few people are sharing their takeaways. I hope everybody does it. I'm quickly going to launch a poll to get your feedback. Please give us your feedback. Yeah, I see somebody's put up a good. Thank you very much, Maya, for your good feedback and the nice long note that you said. Yes, Atomic Habits is a really nice book. I agree with you.
Okay, I think.
Okay, I think everybody is done. Thank you very much for your great feedback as usual. Yes, we have a few people giving their takeaways. I wish everybody would take the effort to put their takeaways down. That's a very, very important part of this session. Otherwise, you're not going to be extracting the most from it. But anyway, on that note, we are going to end today's session. Thank you very much for being here. I had a great time as usual on talking about these issues and talking about a lot of these things. Arunima, thank you very much for being here with us and
Thank
conducting this
you.
excellently. Suresh, thank you for your great feedback. And we will see you next week for another Live Better session where we talk. One of the reasons why we're not giving any of these topics, any of these sessions, an actual topic name is because we want to keep it very broad, very open, very fluid in terms of what we end up talking about, what we end up discussing, because our thought process is each one of these issues, even if you pick up two or three things connected to these topics, that can have a big impact on your life. And we don't we want to go in a direction which is just, it could go anywhere based on questions that Arunima asked, based on questions that you ask. And you have to remember that the thing that we are trying to do through these sessions, ladies and gentlemen, is we are trying to share ideas with you. That's what we're trying to do. We're not coming from a place where we're saying this is the only way to live, this is the only way to kind of live, because I haven't lived in your body, I haven't lived in Arunima's body, you haven't lived in my body, right? So each one of our experiences of the world is fairly similar, also fairly unique in nature. But I think sharing of good ideas is very important, so that you all can kind of think about these good ideas that we discuss here. And all these good ideas come from a good intent as well, right? So even if we end up saying something which is probably a mistake or not, it comes from a good space, it comes from a space of trying to help, it comes from a space of being positive, right? So our intent is to share good ideas that we have come across, experience from our lives, from our research, from our reading, a lot of these things, and kind of have this in this fluid sessions for you. And I'm glad to see that at least a lot of people are enjoying them. And yeah, I hope we do a lot of these sessions. So bye bye, have a good Sunday, have a good week till we meet next time, and at least make on that relationship thing that we shared about, right? Do something about that, ladies and gentlemen, today, right? Put something into action there, right? Whether it's studying that a lot more, or doing the lowest hanging fruit there is to appreciate, but kind of take some action, right? And that's really going to help you. See you, Arunima. Bye bye. See
See
you
you.
guys. Thank
Thank you.
you.